In this interview episode, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Anthony Weaver, host of the About That Wallet podcast and owner of the About That Wallet brand, where he offers education and coaching to help you master your personal finances. Anthony helps us understand the impact our habits and mindset have on our journey toward abundance in every facet of life. You get to hear about his rock bottom moments and about the intentional shifts that he made to get him where he is today. There are several books linked in the show notes based on our conversation, plus the one he didn't mention that I'm going to mention for him. The Habit Journal, designed and published by Sir Anthony Weaver himself, is on Amazon, just waiting for you to click that buy now button once you've been inspired by our conversation. Get ready. We're still in Q1 of 2024, y'all, and there is no time like the present to revisit whether your habits are working for or against you, and then take action as needed. Anthony, thank you for being here with me today. I would love to start by hearing about a moment or a time in your business journey that felt the opposite of abundant.
The time me personally, did not feel abundant was when I first moved out from a long-term relationship, and my finances were to the extreme, to the point where I actually had to max out, I think, 4 of the 5 credit cards that I had. And I just realized I couldn't even buy lunch, which is only $20. And to the point where I actually purchased a pedal bike to go back and forth to work because I refused to pay for gas. It was that moment where I felt like I'm not abundant in a financial sense, but I had to actually surf my mind and understand, like, there are other things that I provide as value that I'm abundant in, which is feeling as though that I am worthy, even though I was told constantly over and over again that I was not worthy. I was useless. I was told that, nobody would like you, nobody would love you as much as I would, and so forth in that relationship. So coming out of it and almost like really taking a deep dive into my life and finding out that I am worthy. I have people who love me and support me, even if they don't know me 100%, like my coworkers and so forth. So they were my new environment, my new support system, to the point that helped me get through that dark spot when it came to understanding like my worth. And I didn't feel abundant, honestly. But to understand, like, abundance is more than just the finances. It's more so of like your feelings, your thoughts on how you feel about yourself. And I'm very abundant on keep going, keep striving until I figure out something new. And then I'll move on to that next thing. But until then, I'm going to keep striving, keep pushing forward, whether I'm broke or not. And that's just a moment in time. But I will never be poor, have like a poor mindset where I will let other things to kind of make me completely less abundant, if that makes sense.
I think it's fair to say that we've all had those kind of like rock bottom moments. And while I didn't buy a pedal bike, I too couldn't afford lunch at one point. Anybody who's known me for the past, 10 years saw us through that. We were considering bankruptcy, and even to file bankruptcy costs money. So guess what? We didn't do it. And so it was just some of those decisions, and we got out of it. We buckled down, put your head down, worked hard, figure it out. And that was my initial foray into podcasting, because guess what? I found personal finance podcasts, and that's what saved us. And then that was also what led me even into this space and the process. So Again, I'm sure you feel this way too. Those rock bottom moments, not only do they often define us, but they define us for years later because of the decisions we make during those tough times. So I would love to hear, as a follow up to that, what did you change? What did you do? I know you said you were just getting out of a relationship that's toxic, if I may say. And obviously that changed. But you mentioned your community. You mentioned a few things in there. And I would love to hear, just on the granular level, were there habits? Did you pick up meditation? Like, what did you do to get you out of that?
Yeah, to get me out of that funk, the first thing I did was like, well, I have a credit card that's still available. And I was like, you know what? I'm by myself. Let me go ahead on and book this trip to Trinidad for Carnival. And because of the timing, it was pretty expensive. I had no clue what I was getting into. It was a solo trip. I just need a drastic change in my life because I haven't been on trips. I haven't been on any vacations throughout the 6 years. And so that now I was able to, like, you know what, let me do something to drastically get my mind off of what's going on in life. And then coming back to not having any money at all because I was really tapped out. And so one of the habits that I got into, which was using a budget calendar, I created it myself. I didn't know what that was called back then, but it was just a regular calendar that, you if you work in most corporate offices, they have like calendars laid out, whatever, if you want to get one for the new year. What I do is just kind of put down all my expenses. I just wanted to see what it looked like on paper. And what I did was take each month, knew where the payments were, what holidays were coming up, make sure I saved the money. I looked at what my income was and created a budget around my lifestyle and trying to figure out, okay, what debts do I need to do if I need to contact these credit card companies to go ahead on and close out these accounts. Let me go ahead on and do that. I didn't care about credit at that point because I was like, I already have a place to stay. I already have the money to pay it off. So let's go ahead on and knock that out. So that was the number one thing that kind of helped me further understand my finances, to kind of build up that self-worth, that confidence again. I was like, you know what, I can actually do this. And this was just a small thing in life and a small thing in that made a big difference into where I'm at today, to running a financial podcast called The About That Wallet, just because it was about that wallet at that point. But you need the habits to kind of get to that level.
So, what was coming to mind for me while you were talking about that was a very similar exercise that I did. Same thing. The calendar is so helpful. I know people generally, when you talk about budgets, it's like on this single sheet and there's some columns, or maybe you do it in an Excel document or something. And okay, great. Like, I see numbers, but it helps so much to have things laid out in a calendar form so you can literally see, like, what date is this thing due and how much do I need by that date? And oh crap, this other thing is due 2 days later. How am I going to get that much money that fast? Or whatever the thing is. It just really helped me plan. And then fast forward now, as a business owner, occasionally it helps to even have our business expenses mapped out throughout the year. I have a massive calendar whiteboard on my wall here. And not only, of course, do I put like events and travel dates and things like that, but anytime there's like big software purchases or larger costs for the business, I'm able to see how that's going to impact the business, or, what's coming up basically. So that was what was going through my head, is like, that exercise works for the rock bottom moment, the personal budget, the business budget. There's a lot to be said for making whatever issue you're facing extremely visible and tangible. So thank you so, so much for sharing that. You look like you have another thought on the topic.
Because on that, it's I had to pretty much create another persona. It's almost creating another persona to the point where it becomes my reality. And it was like, I'm no longer going to be that defeated Anthony anymore. I need to be a confident Anthony. I need to be the Anthony that I wanted to be when I was younger, the Anthony that I dreamt of. In order for me to do that, I had to actually think about it. Okay, well, what does somebody who is happy in their life looks like? What do they wear? What do they eat? What are their exercise routines are? What type of habits that they have? And I created this alter ego. I didn't give it a name. I was just like, this is my future self. This is where I want to be. So I was dressing differently. I got rid of some of the baggy clothes. I started wearing pants that actually fit me, looking at shirts that actually fit well, like start wearing ties to work. And sometimes I wear suspenders and, just kind of do one of those small things, just to kind of give a little edge, almost like the 7 habits of highly effective people, to give something to talk about to start a conversation, but also not losing sight of where I really want to be. And so that is what my ego was set up for, my altered ego, to hide the one that was actually battered and beat down, to the point now I'm not living in the past, but I'm not forgetful of the past so that I can continue on to live that abundant life.
I would love to hear your definition of what abundance feels like and looks like, and what are the important components of abundance for you now.
Abundance now, to me, is almost like the definition of wealth, of being able to do what you want to do with the resources that you have and not worry about anything else additional that comes with it. So what I mean by that, abundance, like abundance of food. You have plenty of it, so much so that you're okay sharing it and you don't ask for anything back. And that's what I like about abundance, to the point now, like even in my business with the podcast, I'm getting all this information, talking to so many different people that I would never have tapped into if I didn't have a podcast, or even just starting the conversation around money, around habits, around the psychological aspects of people's everyday lives. And because I'm having that conversation, that opens up so many different doors, to the point where it's like, I'm getting all this information. I can't do it all. So let me go ahead on and start talking to other people, start sharing the things that I came across. And, I'm like, hey, it's free to me. I'm giving it free to you. And if you're able to take action with it, take action. But if not, it's okay. You can always pass that message on.
Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show. Talk to me about your business and how your business helps other people feel abundant.
Well, right now my business is about financial habits and building those habits that actually stick. And it's under the premise of Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, where he talks about the habit loop. And really, you only need the first 2 chapters. Everything else is
we won't tell anybody that. They have to
stories. Right. Read the book. But if you think about it, all the books that you really read, they give you all the cool stuff in the first 2 to 3 chapters. The rest of it is like resources and stories and stuff like that. understanding that you don't have to finish a book that you read. So the cue process, so it starts off, the habit loop is just a cue, then you have your routine, and then you obviously have your reward, and then it repeats itself. So with my podcast, I try to help people find out what are those routines that you're constantly doing. But in order to understand those routines, you need to know your cues. Like, what is it that's causing you to spend more? What is it that caused you to save more? But we tend to forget the feelings. And most of the time, people do not move until they feel hurt, they feel happy. Some people just feel tired or just lazy. And understanding that actually comes into an acronym, which is HALT, HALT. So understanding what those four triggers are, that will help you determine what your routines are. And a lot of people will tell you, or even psychologists, even when you go to the doctors, they always tell you the what and the why, but they never tell you the how. And that's what my show does, is talking about the how, so that you can maintain your lifestyle that you want, or even change the lifestyle that you want to more of an abundance in finances, in wealth, wealth of knowledge, wealth of health, wealth and family. And these are the things that I really want people to take away, is that you can change any habit, regardless of what people say. You can change a habit in 30 seconds. Do not think about these 30 days and 20, 21 days. You'll hear all these statistics like, oh, it takes 21 days. No, 30 seconds. Because right now you listen to this episode and you'd be like, I do brush my teeth with my right hand all the time. Why don't I do it with my left hand? That could become a brand new habit. But your feeling about that habit determines if it's going to stick or not. Because if you don't feel happy about it, it's not going to work. But sometimes you got to look at the end goal sometimes and not think about the current feelings and like, okay, I want to get healthy. Why do I want to get healthy? Because I want to be able to pick up my child when they're running around. My knees hurt right now, but if you do your routines, you're walking, you're eating different foods, you're trying different spices that are anti-inflammatory so that your joints don't hurt anymore. And you have to keep saying that, because this determines your why. You got to ask your why 5 times. By, what was the name? Sinek?
Simon Sinek, right?
Simon Sinek, yes. And so he talks about the 5 whys, but if you take your whys and do that determines your why. Why do you want to pick up your child? That's your ultimate end goal. That's your big why. But start thinking like, okay, I need to start changing the way how I do things. You got to change your lifestyle. And these are the feelings that are deeply rooted that you have to change, not just the surface ones. Because I can sit up here and smile all day, but I'm really hurt on the inside. And that determines on my actions and my lifestyle. And you're always going to go back to your processes that you set up in your life, or your habits or your routines, so that you can get the feeling, the satisfaction that you desire.
Thank you for bringing up the why exercise. I've heard it called 7 levels deep. I've heard it called the 5 whys, 7 to 5. Either way, by the time you've asked yourself why and given an answer, and why and given an answer, and you've done that 5 to 7 times, you've generally, let me just be honest, you're probably going to end up crying by the end of that, because it is a deep exercise that often takes you back to some childhood memory that you didn't know was there. And holy cow, like, this is the driver of what I don't want to happen or do want to happen, whatever it is. So that's an important exercise to go through, I would say, a couple times a year, even though it's tough. But I also want to thank you and ask you to share a little more about habits, because I love this. I haven't read that particular habit book. I have read Atomic Habits. And in general, that's part of what this whole show is about. I would love to hear about some habits that you do now and how you make sure they're happening and what they're leading you toward. Like, even if you feel like it's a silly goal, like, oh, I'm learning Spanish, and so I have this habit, right? But, all of us have personal goals, business goals, family goals, all these different things. So hearing your habits and your goals might help some of us understand maybe we should be doing a similar method.
Yeah. What keeps me going is fear. So a lot of people think of fear as something to run away from, but I look at fear as something as taking a step towards. And so in order to get over fear, you actually need to take a step forward. You need to start taking action. That's the only way you can get over fear. So think about it. You hear the stories of like, oh, there's like a monster in the closet. Okay. You as a person, you have a response to either A, go forward and turn on some lights inside the room, or you can sit there and freak out the whole time and not know and get under the covers and hoping that this whatever in the closet doesn't come attack you. Or you just kind of scream. Like, this goes back to, okay, what is the cue? You hear a noise and you start looking around. But your routines determines your reward. Now, your reward can look like whatever. Like, hey, all right, I found out either A, it's not a monster in there. It's not a person in there. It's just something fell. You won't know that until you do something. And that something is your routine. Now, the cool thing I like about this, though, is that your routine can actually be a trigger for somebody else. So back to the understanding of, okay, your cue is that you hear something. Your routine is to either scream, make some noise or whatever to figure out what it is. But if you're living with somebody else, your routine, which is to scream or make some noise, it triggers them. So their routine is to come see you and kind of be in the space and trying to help. So I use that to understand it's like, if you keep piecing it more and more, then you can say, okay, now both of you guys are in this situation. Y'all routine is like, okay, we both don't know what's going on. Now y'all routine now is to call the cops. And the cops, okay, it's like, now it's triggering them. Their cue was like, okay, hey, we got a phone call. Now our routine is to go out and investigate. So now the reward for everybody is like, okay, farce alarm. We got everything out the way. And that's it. So it just kind of showed this is just a small 3-step process. But if you think about it, we all operate on everybody's routines. And it depends on, if you feel like you're insignificant in the world, you're not. Because everything that you're doing today triggers somebody else. If you feel like you need some clothes for your baby, you go out to the store to buy something, that's your routine. But you're also helping out another business. You're helping out a small business so that they can continue on to provide a service for you or a product. And I'm taking it to bigger scales because it's like, we all small, but we also in a big pond and we move together. And that's how it really operates. But now let's start thinking about some of these kind of things to avoid in the habit space. Like, a lot of the time, because we coming up with this is the new year. Everybody want to try to change everything all at once. It just doesn't happen.
Have you been spying on me? Yeah. I don't know.
It's like, the top thing is like, everybody want to lose weight. Then the second thing is like, what was it? People want to lose, want to get some money, and then they want to get fit. You want to do more push-ups. Want to have 6-pack abs by, the summertime. Like, now, focus on one thing, or at least 2 or 3 things, like big things. And sometimes I do hate, hey, what is your trajectory all the way out and like for the rest of the year? Now, like, how are you going to survive this a week? Okay. Think about the week. You can have the big goals and work backwards and do that. That sounds nice. But it goes back to, what are you going to do for the month? And let's go with that way. Pick your habits carefully. Look at the commercials. Look at how people are advertising to you. Look at marketing. I look at commercials totally different now. Look at movies totally different now because I understand the habits. When you watch movies, within the first 15 minutes, or even within the first 5 minutes of a movie, something tragic happens to the main character. And then the 80% of it is them trying to figure out, okay, well, what happened? and how to get over it. And then the last 10% is like, okay, they figured out, they feel better. They either stronger now than what they were before when they started. And you just watch them on their journey. And that's pretty much what a habit is set up the same exact way. You're going to spend 80% of your energy in the routine process, 10% on the initial trigger, and the other 10% on the reward slash feelings. But everything will not happen or stick until you get yourself in check.
Wow. So, what are some habits, maybe in your business, that you've implemented over the last year, or just any that you want to share that you feel were really pivotal, that like actually made a difference, whether that be more money or more visibility, whatever it was? What was the habit? And then what was the big shift that you saw because you implemented that habit?
One of the habits that I'm doing that implemented, which is to think bigger, because I have a habit of thinking small and say like, oh, well, I only want to be able to speak. Like I wanted to be a speaker, but I did not expect to be a speaker this year. And FinCon was like, hey, you're going to be a speaker. I just thought about it personally, and I was talking to another person about it, like one-on-one, but to see that it actually came to fruition because I put it out in the world and then I became a speaker. So now I'm like, well, if I did it once by mistake, let me tell everybody that I want to be a speaker at your next event. Just thinking bigger is one of the things that I'm working on, and it has been helpful as far as visibility for the show. And I do want to be on more podcasts and get more brand awareness out there and stuff like that. So it was just a habit of thinking bigger, but also the feeling. It's like, you know what? I really want to push this further. And I do like that. And so it's been really helpful for me in my journey for the business.
Tell people what you want, and the rest of us are more than excited to help push you towards that. Even if it's like, hey, I know of this conference and you're perfect for it, or anything like that. So I think that's a lesson that I've even had to learn over and over and over and over is, yes, it is speaking the goals out loud and like literally sharing them with someone. But even that step takes a bit of guts. When you initially have a thought around, oh, I want this, or oh, maybe I could do that, our minds are so quick to shut us down to where we might not even take that step to tell a friend, right? So noticing that you initially had a thought that seemed big, that felt big, and not letting the lizard brain shut you down so that you can even share your desires with someone so that they can help you. It's like you said, is there a monster in the closet? I don't know. Let me scream. Let me have somebody run in here and check. So that is you screaming, right? That is you realizing, okay, maybe there's a monster in the closet. Should I like shush that fear and be like, nah, you're crazy? Or should you make a noise? Right? So, okay, I want to have this big goal. Don't shush myself. Make a noise. Speak to somebody that you trust about this big goal. And then the other secret would be, find business owners that are on your level. Because in general, if they're ahead of you or on their level, they will not be discouraging you. They will have additional ideas to foster your goals or help you get somewhere, or like bring something to the table that you hadn't even thought of yet. And they'll be encouraging of you. So that was a big piece.
Another thing that I've also been helpful is reading more books. Like you hear about them, but then it was like, I don't sure if this book will really resonate with me. But to understand that each book will provide you a different story that will help you or could possibly hurt you. But more than likely, you'll find something that will resonate with you. Like the 4-Hour Work Week. The reason why I like this book, along with the combination of Never Split the Difference, is because Never Split the Difference helps you have a conversation to try to let people know to take that person out of that situation. So it's more about the situation, not the person. But understanding that with the 4 hour work week will help you out with going beyond, above and beyond what you currently think that's happening. Because I believe in Tim Ferriss's book, he talks about having that conversation with the top people of these companies that you think, oh, they never going to listen to my email. And to the point where he was just putting everybody out there. It was like, you know what, go ahead on and have that conversation. Put yourself out there and you'll be surprised on who will actually respond back to you. And that's one of the things that's been helpful as well, as far as the habit of, like, I guess you could say reading more books and then taking action on those that information. I guess that would be the other thing.
I wonder, has that helped you be more pursuant or more brave when it comes to reaching out for guests for your podcast?
Oh yeah, definitely. To the point where I just had I guess the number one guy on prenups
Wow.
come on the show because he actually owns prenups.com. And I was like, how did he actually get that website?
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. And then actually reaching out to Bernadette Joy, as you and we both met her, to come on the show. And it was like, I was so nervous because she was talking the main stage on FinCon. And I'm like, is it okay you come on the show? Like,
yeah, again, we feel small, right? And to realize that nobody else actually like thinks you're small, like in any way whatsoever. You just think that about yourself.
Right.
I struggle with that as well. Yeah. So
I don't know. As a business owner, you always feel like you're failing though, right?
Often.
Yeah.
Often.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think a big part of my journey towards this abundance mindset is also allowing the roller coaster of emotions that is, right? Like, it's okay to have tough days. It's okay to feel like, I'm just going to quit today because everything I've touched has broken or messed up, or like, I'm just not having it today. So it's time to like shut it down, go have a cup of tea, take some breaths. Maybe I come back to work that day, maybe I don't, but letting that be okay, because that's followed by more than enough rock star days where you're going to feel on top of the world. And it just turns out that you just needed that break. So maybe, have you had that same experience?
The exact same experience. It was to the point where I took a hiatus from a podcast for about 3 months. And during that 3 month time, like right before my 3 month hiatus, my podcast was actually hitting average about 300 downloads a day. And then when I took the hiatus, it dropped to like 2. So understanding, okay, so now I'm actually trying my best to build back up to those levels again. The only thing about it though is just that times have changed. I've changed and my audience have changed, and I changed the way how I show up. And I changed the way what times that I actually publish my shows. I don't go live on Wednesdays anymore. So I was like shifting everything to more convenient to me, and it wasn't convenient for the audience. But I'm finding new people in the new space, and it's almost like starting over again. But I enjoy it a little bit more because I'm setting more boundaries, if that makes sense, of my time. And as a business owner, we always working. Even if we're not working, we thinking about work.
Yes.
Because like,
if I'm laying in bed, if I'm not asleep,
right.
I'm thinking.
Right.
Yes.
Because like right now, like I'm actually thinking like, how are you going to edit this episode while we're talking? Because as a podcaster, it's like, okay, are we going to edit this out? This is going to be a gem. We want to keep this, going to take this out. This is the part of the business. And so for those of you who are even thinking about getting into a business, I would say try to be an apprentice of that business first. So say if you want to be a podcaster, listen to a lot of podcasts. See if you can get on some of these shows. I take anybody on my show. Some people are very specific. Like for me, I talk to anybody because everybody has a financial habit, regardless of what status they are, if they have a business or not. I'm always open. So, it's one of those things that you got to look into. It's like, if you want to be like some of the famous musicians, they started off just sweeping the floors inside the studios, and then they asked for a shot, and then they got their shot, and now they are musicians. Like, at least get into the environment, change your environment, change your thought process. Just go ahead on and go after it. You will always beat yourself up over regrets than just even giving yourself a shot. So don't shoot yourself first before you're shooting your shot to somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Because I love how you highlighted you had to take a step back and redesign, sounds like almost everything in the business to support the life that you want now. It's so often that, yes, we start a business to have freedom, right? But then it turns out that, like, you're working at, what is the saying, that only entrepreneurs are the people crazy enough to leave a 40-hour work week for the 80-hour work week and say they're going to be happier. So owning a business can be wonderful, but it can also accidentally take over your life. And it sounds like you stood back, looked at things, said, okay, what does abundance look like for me now? And how do I redesign this to fit my time, my energy, my desires for the show, how I want this to look going forward? And I want to highlight that because that is a conversation I have with business owners who are starting podcasts. They seem so afraid of launching something that isn't perfect. And I'm always sharing with them, yes, think about your concept, think about your structure, be really thoughtful about how and where you're going to record interviews and how often it's going to go live. But listen, you can pivot. You can adjust things. You can pull back and go every other week instead of weekly. You can make those adjustments. Just fill us in when you're going to do that.
Something.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost like dating when it comes to podcasting, because it's like we show up all the time because we're in a communication business. We got to communicate with the audience. And like you said, with the business owners, is that you're dating your customers. In order for you to get to your long-term customers, you really need to talk to them and be like, hey, what excites you? What do you really like about our business? What do you don't like? How can we show up more for you? Because at the end of the day, a business is just a service. The customer, it's not always right, but they can provide some insight on how to pivot. They can provide some insight because they don't know the how piece. They just know what they like to see and what other people are doing and what they like about these other things. But you'll never be 100% for everybody. Because I was thinking about, like, when you say the world doesn't want perfect, if you think about it, your operating system, they operate on the waterfall method, which means like they put out version 1. And then if you look at your operating system, they'd be like, oh yeah, 13.2.5. It's like, what?
13 renditions later, I'm going to have working software. Gosh. Yeah, that's a great example. While we're on the topic of podcasting a little bit with the business owner's journey with abundance mixed in there, I would love to hear your perspective of the personal growth you've experienced being behind the mic.
Wow.
I saw you laughing, so like I want to know what's going on there too.
Well, I'm thinking about like all the equipment that I have now versus when I started. I started pretty much with what I had. All I had was just my cell phone, which is this one here. And all I had was using the mic that's on the phone. And I used the app for Anchor or whatever, because Spotify owned it. I mean, whatever. And that was the only thing that I had. And I just had record on the phone and started talking. And I remember several times is that I would forget to press the record button, forget that the mic was on mute a couple of times, messed up my intro so much so that I was like, you know what? I need to sit down, pre-record my intro. So it's the same intro all the time. And then I was like, cool, got that out the way. It took me at least 8 times to get the one time out there. Then I was like, cool, now my outros suck. So let me go down and pre-record my outros. Got those in. Then I was like, cool, I came up with a simple budget calendar. Like, let me come up with a commercial for that. Took me about 12 times to get that right. But I didn't give up. And to the point now, because I've listened to the podcast that I put out there and everything like that, it's almost like my subconscious remembers what my intro is. And it's rare that I forget my intro to my podcast, but I'd say everything live now to the point. So now I go live on Thursdays, at the time of this recording. I still go live on Thursdays, and then I also have pre-recorded shows because a lot of people were asking, when are you going to do solo shows again? Because I've been doing so many guests, and to the point now my backlog is about 8 to 9 people deep now. So I have that, which I didn't have before. And before I had to do more note taking, I had to do more research just to kind of come up with a 10 to 15 minute episode. To the point now I could just talk to the whole episode for like an hour easily, but I'm trying to shorten it down to like 15, 20 minutes. It's tough.
So, okay, so we heard a bit about when you started podcasting, basic equipment. That's awesome. Tell me how that has shifted and how you've grown.
My personal growth is that it helped me do better at speaking up. And even in my day job, like I'm doing, for us being inside the leadership perspective, I'm able to provide a little bit more stories, be able to pull from different resources. And also I'm able to lean on other people's experiences because I was able to have guests and talk to them and ask them about, what are their life stories like? What have they witnessed and experienced? So now, as we speak in here in 2024, that I spent over at least $2,000 in equipment from my humble beginning of just my cell phone. And it becomes expensive because you got your lighting, you got your mixer, yeah, your time, and the laptop and everything like that. It's like, when you really invest, you invest in a lot of time for the research of other podcasts and everything like that, just to kind of hone in the craft. And that's one of the things that's missed, I see. So for those of you who are listening now, like if you're thinking about podcasting, listen to how podcasts are structured and what type of questions they're asking, how are they asking them, how their audio, does the audio really matter? Are they doing video? Like, look at the structure. So now when I listen to other people's podcasts, I'm listening for what are the questions that they're asking. And it's causing me to even buy books about asking the proper questions to get the answers that you need. Like, I don't know, like being on this side of the mic has really opened up my world to just understanding so much.
I think being more intuitive and insightful, because of the conversations that you've been privy to. Like you said, you kind of have like access to these professionals and speakers and authors that the podcast gives you credibility in that way.
And it also gives you it's free access. Because the divorce attorney I was talking to was supposed to only be about like a 30-minute conversation, but he spent the whole hour with me.
Wow.
And they charge by the hour.
Yeah.
So, I was like,
you're thinking this is a $500 call?
Like, yes, easy. So I talked to several lawyers. I talked to several, obviously, financial specialists, and they charge by the hour as well. Being on this side of the mic will open up doors to just the insides and actually able to ask the questions that you'll typically ask them anyway, but you have to pay to ask those same questions. Even with tax professionals, like they was like, hey, my time to even just talk about taxes is about $150 an hour. And I'm like, geez, well, glad you for being on your show. Like,
so talk to me, because you mentioned now you have probably $2,000 worth of equipment, and I too have accumulated a lot over the past 4 years. So what did that path look like? Like, give us an idea of the timeline. Like, it's okay to start simply and then grow as we need. But like, if budget is a whole thing, yes, but then how fast did you upgrade? Or was there a certain number of episodes? Or how did you decide when to upgrade? Because I know equipment's like a huge thing.
I used an app on the phone, and I noticed that my audio was okay, but I kept hearing this echoey sound. So I was like, all right, let me try a headset to my phone to try to reduce some of that. That was okay, but the audio quality wasn't there. So then I upgraded to start using my laptop, and I used a USB mic. And I was like, cool, this sounds nice. But I'm still more breathly, and I'm very breathly still with this thing. I need to figure this out.
I'm not hearing it. I
Um,
think you're okay.
okay. So I slowly was upgraded because I was experimenting, and as I'm listening to other podcasters and what they're putting out, what type of quality and what type of show that I want to have, help me upgrade. So then I finally got this mic. So I got the mic first, not knowing what I was getting into. Well, this is the SM7B mic. And then I was like, well, I don't have it's not USB compatible. So now I gotta go buy a whole nother mixer.
Yeah.
I was like, come
What
on.
is this
like,
cord? What
so,
is this? This is round?
You're
What
right.
the hell?
And I was like, what is, so then I was like, after I purchased this thing, then I was like, oh yeah, they do have a USB option.
Great.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a lot cheaper than this thing. But now, so when I talk to other people and other podcasters, I was like, don't get the equipment that I have, get other things. But if you really like what I have, then these are the things that I have. But you don't need this to get started. I don't know. Build a habit first to see if you like it. Because if you wind up spending all this money, then it's a loss. Go ahead on and start with what you have. Because I think the last thing I purchased was this like 4K camera, but I have yet to figure out where I'm gonna mount it and if I'm gonna use it or not. So
I think that's the key, is making yourself start simply. And even still, this is a Samsung Q2U mic. It's like $50 and it's great. And I recommend it to everybody because it's USB. Like you said, there's not these crazy cords that I don't even have something that they plug into. And I do have that other equipment that I take to conferences and things like that. But 4K camera upgrade, like that's a slow thing. That's something I just got recently. You just got yours recently. So like start with what works, edit it, do what you need to do with it, and upgrade in time. I think that's a really solid lesson. So as we close, you've shared some amazing nuggets around habits and shifts that you've made and how you're working toward abundance. And I would love to hear just a bit more about your podcast, where people can find you, and even the services that you offer.
before I get into that, I just want to leave one last message for everybody. It's from Mahatma Gandhi, which is your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. So I leave that with you because we were actually talking about habits today. And so my show is about helping you build strong financial habits. And the show is called About That Wallet, where you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or X, and Facebook. Highly active on Instagram and X. So if you ever just want to chat, just go on DM me at About That Wallet. You can go to aboutthatwallet.com. The services I provide is mostly one-on-one sessions. And so that we can talk about that at your leisure, just to help you build a budget, stick to it. And if you just want to change your financial habits, let's do it.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time today, Anthony. This was a wonderful conversation, and I even learned a lot, even though I'm like into this habit, like personal development space, but I'm even learning things from you. So I really appreciate this time.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate you, Virginia.
Yeah, thank you.